I'm Dr. Eldad Farhi. I'm a counseling and psychotherapeutic psychologist. I run psychologyexpert.co.uk, and today I will be talking about psychology. How to write a psychology report depends very much on the type of report you want to write. If you're writing it for your university course, then obviously you have to write something very much like an essay, and you should follow the guidelines that you've been given and that you've been practicing in writing essays to get to the place you are in. If we're speaking of the more specific, really psychological type of reports, we probably are talking about either a therapy report or a letter to a GP sort of report, or perhaps the more specialized medical legal type of psychology report. The first one is more simple. Basically, having interviewed the individual, you form an idea, we call it a formulation, of the problems besetting that person's and their causes, possibly also of the treatment that could be followed. You write this in the shape or form of a letter, if it's sent outside, perhaps a longer one, 2 or 3 pages, in which you set out the information, the background information you have collected, the type of problems that have been reported, the understanding that you made of why those problems came to be, and of course, what are your suggestions for treatment and for their progress. If you're writing a medical legal type of psychological report, this is very much the same, but much more meticulous. It can be several pages long. I've personally written up to 50 pages in complex cases. What happens there is that yes, you follow the same methodology, you interview the person, but then you would probably introduce several formal tests, both of psychological and of cognitive issues, which will enable you to gather specific information which is relevant for the purpose of the report. The information you have gathered both in the interview section and by testing would be combined in order to explain or to report on the state of the individual tested and interviewed. That report will be written in the form and following the procedures that apply to the place and time you're preparing those. That is, legal requirements in the UK would dictate a different type of report to those in the States. Once you have followed that, you have prepared a psychological report. One last point you'll have to keep in mind is to follow also the ethical guidelines of your organization. That is, you ought not to prepare a report in an area in which you do not have the sufficient expertise. You should always make clear in your report what is your opinion, what is information you've verified, and what is hearsay. And you should, of course, make sure that in your reports you stick to the truth. Just because someone pays you does not mean that you can tell a story that they want to hear. You have to be faithful to the principles that your organization puts in its ethical standards. If you follow those guidelines, you will have a valid psychological report.